Welcome, boys and girls, once again to another exciting episode of Under the Dome Podcast, the home of the Houdat Nation. I'm Alan Ulrich. I'm here with my partner, Sean Williams. How you doing tonight, Sean?
Doing real good, man. You managing to stay dry down there?
Hey, we're doing all right over here for a change. It's Baton Rouge and Lafayette that's really got pounded. Uh,
Yeah. So I see on the news. We want to let everyone that's in the affected areas know that our hearts and our thoughts and prayers are with you guys.
Absolutely.
Um, just something really quick. James Laurinaitis, our new linebacker, tweeted this out yesterday. Anyone that's outside of the area that would like to help out with the relief effort, you can text LA Floods, that's LAFLOODS, to 90999, and that'll allow you to make a $10 donation to the Red Cross that will go directly to the relief of the flood victims in South Louisiana. Also,
Absolutely.
I want to take a moment to, as always, thank our friends at Fan First Productions for sponsoring our podcast. And at the same time, I want to wish a speedy recovery to our our biggest friend and supporter, Joey Riolano. He's not doing so good, and we want to wish him the best. And Joey, brother, I hope you get up and on your feet soon. We love you, man. We thank you so much.
Absolutely, Joey. You take care. Um, yeah, I've got a lot of friends in and around the Baton Rouge area, and I have a lot of friends in the Lafayette area. Both my kids go to UL, so yeah, it's this. This is especially now. We're looking in about 2 weeks of the 11-year anniversary of Katrina.
Yeah.
A lot of people moved to Denham Springs and to the North Shore and to Lafayette to get away from New Orleans and the rebuild of New Orleans, and have to go through this again 11 years later. It's really, really tough. And, I was following on Facebook all weekend, friends of mine who've never flooded having water in their homes. So, Stu Breeze, one of our good friends over there
Yeah.
on Facebook, he yeah, he started Friday night with the water in his house. So I know he's having a really rough time of it. People in New Iberia and so forth. So our thoughts and prayers are with you guys, and I'm really
Absolutely.
I'm really proud of our Cajun Navy. I've never seen more people get out in their personal boats, their personal watercraft, to go out there and help as many people as they can. You saw the footage on I-12, truckers and families bringing cases of bottled water to people. Truckers opening up, their manifests. If they had fresh fruit, whatever, they gave it to the people there because you were on that interstate for 31 hours. You had nowhere you could
Yeah.
go.
I
So
think
it's
it speaks well to and it always makes me proud. You know, the things that occurred in Baton Rouge earlier this year, it brought a national spotlight in a really bad way
mhm,
to the people of Louisiana for whatever good or bad reasons there were. And in times of crisis, like during Katrina and now during this, you see what the real people of this state are
absolutely,
are
absolutely,
about. We we
absolutely,
we come together like no other because
right.
we've had to for so long.
Hey, you look at every, I'm a rip on every city right now, but if you look at every city in America, they win a championship. What's the first thing you do? Overturn cars, burn things, loot, riot, whatever. What happens when the Saints won the Super Bowl? What happens when LSU won the national championship twice?
Mardi
What?
Gras lasted all year.
That's right. We know how to throw a party. We know how to take care of ourselves.
That's right.
Um, Speaking of football, we had our first semi-taste of football. I don't really. Preseason's a glorified practice, and you have to really look at it that way. You can't look at it from the standpoint of, you know, are we going to win or lose? We have to beat these teams in preseason or whatever. I know what Sean Payton says, but it really is a glorified practice. And for about a quarter, we looked really, really good. The defense was really impressive. The offense, when they weren't turning the ball over, was really, really sharp. Uh, I think we held the Patriots to 25 yards total offense in the first quarter alone. So, I mean, you saw a lot of good things in that brief little period. And then the turnovers, the penalties, the mistakes, uh, the game kind of unraveled quickly. It was 17-14, I think, at halftime. And by the end of the game, I think they lost by 22. And 22 points could be attributed directly to the 4 turnovers.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing that I believe that it was Gus Cattingill that I was listening to this morning on the radio, and he said, "Well, if you think about it, the penalties for one, we had 9 penalties for 93 yards,
Yeah.
which in a normal game situation is absolutely you can't win that way.
You can't win with 4 turnovers. You can't win with 9 or 10 penalties. That's lost yardage because a lot of those penalties took away positive plays. They
Sure.
had a great run, and then holding, it's all going to come back. So yeah, you don't win football games turning the ball over. You don't win football games committing penalties, and especially with the Brandon Browner reign of error over an error, ERROR. Yeah, fans really want to see a cleaner, better defense than this, and that's probably the worst part of the takeaway of that game.
To
Um,
me, I saw way just maybe I'm just the eternal optimist, which people some people would give you really good odds of me never having been called that. But when it comes to this, yeah, there were a lot of negatives, but the biggest takeaways that I got from this were, despite what a lot of people believe, and if you want to find out how popular your take on the game is, tweet it out. You'll find out real quick. I
well,
thought I thought that Garrett Grayson played it in just in the confines of this game for what you were looking at those two guys to do. I thought that Garrett Grayson did a better job than Luke McCown. Once, of course, his first pass was a pick six, which there again, my somewhat unpopular take on that was I think that was more attributable
oh,
to
absolutely. It's Brandon
to
Coleman.
Brandon Coleman.
Brandon Coleman alligator arm that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You go
Look,
back and you watch the replay of that pass,
mhm.
Brandon, as a receiver, you're taught if on that type of pass, if you can't make the catch, you don't touch the ball because you have three defenders right there on you. You have nothing behind you.
Well, you have to pretend to be a defensive back there. You have to break up that pass. Just don't let it go straight to the defender. You become a
Now,
defensive back.
I don't let Grayson off the hook completely. The ball could have been thrown better, but at the same time, the play's over. Grayson comes back in the huddle, and according to some of the players, he joked, "Well, that ain't how we wanted to get started. Now let's go. Let's get this game on going." He kept himself in the game. He had a short memory, and if you go back and you watch the replay of it, Grayson was doing an excellent job, something that he's never quite been recognized for before. He was going through his progressions. He was finding his third, his fourth, his fifth options on plays. He was
Well,
hitting the open man.
I read or I heard during the broadcast too that the Saints hit 17 different receivers during the game.
Sure.
Look, during the regular season, I used to do this good, bad, and ugly when it came to the games, and I don't do them during the preseason because it's pointless. It's not a game about winning. But if I were to break down the game and say, okay, what were the good things of this game? Well, first off, Michael Thomas, 4 incredible catches.
A,
Uh,
st- a star is born.
I tell you what, I was listening to a different podcast today, and I totally agree with this take. Michael Thomas is probably the most talented receiver that Drew Brees has ever had in his 10 years here in New Orleans, or 11 seasons in New Orleans. Marcus Colston, great player, obviously greatest receiver ever to put a Saints uniform on, but it was not so much that he was talented as he was a hard worker, and
Sure.
he succeeded in this scheme. Colston goes to a team like, oh, I don't know, Cincinnati or Pittsburgh, he probably doesn't become as successful as he did in New Orleans. Devery Henderson, Robert Meacham, Lance Moore, those guys are all products of the system. They really thrived in Sean Payton's matchup system. Michael Thomas is somebody who looks like he could succeed in any offense anywhere. And that's something you don't see very often. That's the kind of thing you see reserved for receivers like, Des Bryant, Randy Moss, Jerry Rice. And I'm not putting him in that category yet.
Sure.
But watching him catch the ball, we were talking about Coleman before, watching him catch the ball, he snatches that ball out of the air. He goes and gets that thing. And that's the difference between Thomas and Coleman. Coleman lets the ball come to him. He catches it with his body. He alligator armed that pass that turned to a pick six because he didn't use his frame, his size, his long arms to go out there and go get that ball and yank it away from the defender. You saw a play with Michael Thomas where he was clearly interfered with. Okay? The guy is all over him, and Thomas still makes the catch. I mean, how many times as a Saints fan did you see other receivers do that against our guys? And now we've got one that looks like he can do that. So if I did my good, that would be my good. That was probably the best thing of the game. The Saints pass rush, it was actually a pass ruch. We saw Edebali go out there and get 2 sacks. Laurinaitis came in. You saw good play out of the linebackers. Stubar had an unbelievable pass breakup in the end zone, something that you never saw with Saints linebackers. So, I mean, you saw a lot of positives, but it was single plays, okay? Let's see if in the Houston game they can kind of string those plays a little bit more and be a more consistent unit rather than just highlight individual plays. My bad, and this is going to go kind of counter what you said, my bad goes to the Saints quarterbacks and the Saints offensive line. I thought that my issue with Grayson from the beginning has been on his fundamentals. I think he holds the ball down too low. I think he has a hitch in his throw where he kind of takes his arm and kind of extends it out too far because he holds it down so low. He extends it out too far when he goes to throw instead of that nice compact throw that Drew Brees has. And his footwork was bad. He didn't step into a lot of his throws. That's why you saw so many balls sail. He did not drive a pass. And the worst part, when McCown came in, McCown didn't do it either. I counted one pass that McCown actually stepped in and put some heat on it and went right down the middle. It was a great throw. But the interception in the end zone was an underthrown ball, very reminiscent of the Carolina game. And it's like he kept looking to get that little touch that Drew has where he could just drop that ball. You saw that in the very first pass of the game. Drew dropped that ball right over the defensive back, right into Brandon Cook's arms, on that 35-yarder. And it was like those two were trying to imitate Drew instead of just playing the game the way they can play it. So,
my issue with McCown was one of the things, especially based on the play that he had last year. You depend, or McCown for being accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And I counted I want to say it was either 3 or 4 passes in that second half the other night where he had guys in the end zone and just absolutely. There were 2 to R.J. Harris, one of which was the interception you spoke of.
Right.
The other one was just completely overthrown. But a play or so before the interception, he had Thomas in the end zone on a jump ball and just complete. You, you don't know McCown for doing that. Now, there's a possibility, the argument can be made, I suppose, where McCown was running with the scrubs and Grayson was running with the ones and twos. But, you look at it realistically, McCown's the backup. He should be able to do what he does regardless of who's in front of him. He's a pro.
He shouldn't look like the problem, and that's what I saw a lot of. It like the
Now,
receivers were running good routes, it like he had the time and the protection, and he was the one throwing the bad passes for no reason.
and while I do give Grayson the nod, neither one of them were stellar. I think
No.
Grayson. Well, let me put it a different way. I think that the bar was much lower for Grayson to achieve. I had much higher expectations, or I felt like McCown would at least cover the expectations to this level. But maybe Luke had a bad night. It's neither here nor there. Like you said, it's a preseason game. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the passing game goes, the bad for me, you got a very wide open and very, as far as this team goes, important positional battle going on at wide receiver. One of the guys that everybody seems to talk about making the 53-man roster, Brandon Coleman, no catches, no yards.
Right.
Then you got a guy like Dangerfield. He had a catch. You got
Tommy Lee
Lewis, man. His size is gonna be a definite hurdle. I'm not nearly gonna say that he won't make the roster, because he's obviously a very talented, very athletic guy, and I wish him all the luck in the world. But if I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was say I was doing the in-game updates over on the New Orleans Saints Facebook page, and I kept saying he reminded me of Joe Horn, like somebody shrunk Joe Horn in the wash. And it's not just the 87. It's not just the 87. It's he was a dynamic player like Horn was. Horn didn't just run routes. He looked dynamic, doing everything. He caught the ball, very emotional, very excited. That jet sweep for the 2-point conversion, very nice play.
Very good.
He is going to be a tough one to evaluate because that 5'7" is, 165 pounds. That is tough to justify activating at the NFL level, because can he get off of a press coverage? He's very quick, very explosive, but I want to see him return more kicks. I thought Marcus Murphy had a solid game for somebody who's fighting for the job. I thought he had a solid game. I'd like to see what happens now with Lewis back there returning kicks. Can he be that game, breakaway threat? Can he be what everyone thought Joe Morgan was going to be?
Yeah.
Daniel Lasco had a pretty solid game. But Daniel Lasco, he's quick, and he's a bull. He runs right up the gut. But he reminds me of what Hokie Gajon used to say about him when he was playing. If you need 3 yards, Lasco's going to get you 3 yards. If you need 10 yards, Lasco's going to get you 3 yards. He doesn't look like he has, at least what I saw, much shake and bake in his running style. He's a straight-on runner who, when he gets in the open field, he may do something, but he's just going to run right at you.
Yeah. But think about conversely though. As at least at this point in time and this stage of the game, I don't see Lasco being our number one back.
No.
If Lasco's running the ball, something's gone terribly wrong.
we're going to get to this a little bit later. I had Lasco making the team, but it's possible he may be stashed in the practice squad now. Just depending on how there's a three-way battle right now for that kick return spot. Do they go with five wide? Do they go with four backs? How are they going to juggle this? With Murphy getting a lot of the carries Thursday night, they were giving him his opportunity to shine. Let's see now if Lasco gets a lot of carries against Houston and see how he does with that. Um,
Actually, Murphy was the leading rusher the other night with
yes, he
7 carries
was.
for 22 yards.
He was. The other bad is Mark Ingram putting the ball down on the ground
Sure.
after a great drive. He killed it. And Ingram already has that. I don't know how to explain it other than the negative connotation people have about him. They don't. He's always hurt. He never. I think he's only finished one season
Yeah.
healthy as a Saint. People get aggravated with him because he's not explosive when he runs. He's certainly not a Deuce McAllister. Uh, but at the same time, somehow he manages to get 4.8 yards a carry. Somehow he manages to lead the team in rushing, and he's the primary back. So it's a love-hate relationship right now with Ingram,
Sure.
and you know, having him put the ball on the ground now. Deuce put the ball on the ground a lot too. People kind of forget that because he may put the ball on the ground, but he's also going to break open, a 35-yard run, a
He also
45-yard run, and he
he
ran
also
over
put it in
people,
he also put it in the end zone.
and he put it in the end zone. Right. So people forget they forgive the fumbles
Sure.
because he was such a dynamic player. Ingram doesn't have that, So
Ingram
it's
always strikes me as the type of guy you want your feature back to be. He's going to start the season here, and he's going to go up this mountain, and he's going to get here, and then when he reaches the top of that mountain, he's going to burst over it and take you to this level. Well, Ingram always gets right there to the precipice of that mountain.
yeah,
That's it.
you
What you
know,
said a minute ago, the only season that he's finished healthy is contract year.
yeah, yeah, and you saw more of an explosive, angry running back in Chris Ivory, and that's what the fans look at and say, okay, that's what I want Ingram to do here, and he's not doing that, and he's not Deuce McAllister, so he's not, and he's not Pierre Thomas, who had that unique ability to make the first person hit the yards after contact. That first person hits
Yeah.
you, he spins off of that and then falls forward. You don't see that with Ingram. And that's what turns a lot of fans off, even though he is a productive back. That's the dynamic you have going on here, and that's probably the most frustrating thing about Mark Ingram.
But
He's
but tell me this, is the frustration with Ingram and the shortcomings in his game, how much of that is due to the fact that, for lack of a better way of putting it, Peyton doesn't fully commit to the ground game?
You know, Bobby Abe was going on about this too. Okay, Deuce McAllister got 1,000 yards rushing in 2006. Pierre Thomas was an important aspect of the team from 2009 through 2013. He was a very dynamic part of the offense. Here you had Darren Sproles get the all-purpose yardage. The running game for the Saints, they are not going to be 3 yards in a cloud of dust, Big Ten offense. They will never be that under Sean Payton. That's how it was under Jim Moore.
Yeah.
What Payton wants to do, and I've said this several times, Payton wants to get the passing game going, get enough of a running game going that you get a play-action pass effect, build up a lead, and then in the third and fourth quarter, grind that clock out. That's where the rushing yardages come.
Yeah.
That's if you look back in 2009 when Mike Bell would come in the second half with fresh legs and he'd just pound that defensive line. There was nothing the other team could do because they're trying to get back into the game. So they're throwing the ball over the place. We get the turnover or we get them off the field, 3 and out, and then here comes that running game again. And then he uses the passing game as a substitute for the running game in a traditional West Coast offense approach with short passes. First down, we're getting 7 yards on a pass play, a quick little bubble screen, a quick slant, whatever. So there is a running game. It's not going to be, a fullback, running back,
Yeah.
2 tight ends. We're coming at you, straight man-on-man blocking. It's just not going to be that way.
Sure.
And so, and I've heard people say Ingram is that kind of back that needs that kind of offense. Well, he can't work with that kind of. You can't have that, and that's going to lead into the ugly. When we had Jari Evans in his prime, and we had Carl Nix, and you had Stitchcomb, and you had Bushrod out there, you can have that power offense where they would clear these huge holes for the running backs to get through. Last night or Thursday night, we saw that's not the kind of offense we're going to have, not kind of offensive line we're going to have.
Sure.
Is it because we're running players back and forth? People were ripping on Pete for having a terrible game. Pete played 3 different positions Thursday night, and I knew this was going to happen one day. My work phone ringing. But Pete played 3 different positions that night, okay? At left tackle, he'd been practicing left tackle all week, since training camp started because Armstead was out. He's been running that left tackle position. They put him at left tackle in the beginning. He did okay on the play that Ingram fumbled. Unfortunately, Pete had a fantastic block. Then they moved him to right guard. He struggled. They put him at right tackle, and Chris Long was killing him.
You just got my ugly.
Yeah. So you've got him running all these different positions. Is he thinking too much? What's going on? I don't know, and it's probably because we really don't have true good NFL Pro Bowl level guards. We've got a bunch of guys named Joe, and you're forcing a tackle to play guard.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's going to work. I don't think it will. I think that's going to be an issue we're going to have to deal with the entire year unless they find somebody really, really good off the waiver wire, or make a trade, to upgrade that position.
Well, my ugly was absolutely that series where Pete was in Streif's normal right tackle position. Chris Long just absolutely abused him. And it brings to me a question. I honestly and sincerely believe that we're defeating the purpose, trying to force feed Pete into every position across the front except center. I think we need to find one specific spot, because if you think about it, on opening day, we're going to have him to step into a role and to deliver.
Yesterday, Sean Payton pretty much said that this is going to be on a starting offensive line.
Yeah,
Armstead's back. That. Yeah, Lolito at left tackle and left guard, Unger at center, Pete at right guard, and then Streif at right tackle. So he's going to try and form that bond, and I guess they're going to hope the scheme will help these guys and they can work together and develop that chemistry. I worry again. The blitz against in the A gap against Drew Brees is always effective. We talk about all these weapons he has as receivers. If he's constantly being moved off the spot because of pressure right in the middle, those weapons can be pretty useless. So I don't know. that offensive line is going to be a problem. They've tried several things to address it, and they still have not been able to do it. I mean, you saw at the draft, Sean Payton was crushed that the kid Garrett from Stanford was gone. The other guard, I think he wanted, was also taken early in the second round. And then after that, there was nobody else he was even interested in. And Turner hasn't stepped up to be very impressive. Avery Young's been hurt the whole camp so far. Jack Allen came in and played center for a good bit.
Yeah.
Does he move in the guard position? This against Houston, that's going to be tough because he's small. He has short arms.
Yeah.
And that's a problem to put him at guard. Pete's maybe too big to play guard. Jack Allen's got the opposite problem. Guys will get into him because of the short arms. He's not going to be able to get a hold of people for pass protection or to drive them off the ball. He's a nasty, physical guy, but he may have to be stuck at center.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that works. But yeah, I would say the offensive line's pretty ugly. And then, here we go with injuries. Stephon Anthony gets chop blocked, no flag called, chop blocked, and he kind of limped off the field, and later on you see him get carted. He says that he's going to be back before the opener. That's going to be tough to have him out all that time because he's learning that new position at Sam.
Yeah.
The good news is I think Robinson and Stupar are very, very capable. We're no longer talking about a Rich Marty kind of guy or a James Anderson or someone like that stepping in. You have legitimate NFL linebackers who can play coming in.
Well, I believe you made the point last week. Robinson is a guy that started last year in this league.
Yeah.
So.
And you can see the difference. A healthy Ellerby. You can see the difference. Laurinaitis, he's not going to be, he's not Jonathan Vilma, but he is a better than a 2014 Curtis Lofton, I should say. He's a younger Curtis Lofton almost. He's a two-down linebacker. Don't ask him to drop off in coverage and things like that, but he understands, he can see defenses and offenses a lot better, and he was shooting a gap and putting all kinds of pressure on Garoppolo. You could see that Thursday night.
I think that the defense, the ones and twos, that's basically what my opinions are formulating on, at least in the first game anyway. I think that, as you said, the pass rush looked very good. I did happen to notice that the over-the-top aggressive style that we were employing early in the game, as well as it was working, we were playing against probably the best coach in the league, and it took him about a quarter and a half to take that aggressiveness and use it against us.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I especially the linebacker play. The defensive line looked now, granted, it may be a case where we just wanted so badly to be impressed that but I know you and I have been trying to talk guys off the ledge in certain groups this week about the other major injury that we sustained, which was yesterday.
Yeah.
When Sheldon Rankins went down with a broken fibula.
Mm-hmm.
I reached out to a friend of mine, Andrew Jews, earlier this evening to see if he had any recent updates on things. He said that nothing new, but it looked like Anthony would be ready for week 1, and Rankins, who, as I understand it, did have surgery this morning.
Yeah.
He looks to be a solid go for at least the bye week, which is going to be week 5 of the season.
Right. Look, I was kind of mad when I saw the bye week was all the way up at week 5 when I saw the schedule come out. Now it's going like it's a good thing.
Absolutely.
People are freaking out. They're hearing 6 to 8 weeks to recover from a broken leg, which is, believe it or not, in football injuries, it's a lot better than a torn ligament, which is out for the year, or the dreaded high ankle sprain,
Most
which
definitely.
which comes and goes. That's something that you seem to be okay, and then you push off on it, and it's injured again. So if I'm going to take an injury, I'm going to take a broken leg, which sounds
Sure.
unbelievable, but yeah. Jack Youngblood, 1979, played with a broken leg in the playoffs, broke it against Dallas.
In the
And he
Super Bowl.
told him, tape it up. This is Dallas. He finished the Dallas Cowboys game, played against Tampa Bay. Then he was in the Super Bowl against the Steelers with a broken leg. Now, it wasn't a weight-bearing bone. We know all this. It was probably a hairline fracture, but it's considered broken. But still, it
Jesus.
makes a great story.
It
Makes a
was a
great story.
broken leg.
Yeah. And this is the thing that I was trying to stress when we were talking people off the ledge. For a change now, you actually have depth behind these
Absolutely.
guys. So, one person said we lost 4 starters. You lost Keenan Lewis, you lost Kihaka, you lost Rankins, you lost Anthony. Okay, 4 injuries in your starting defensive players. But look what's happened. P.J. Williams has stepped up and played extremely well. Then you got Crawley and Harris both fighting for those nickel and dime jobs with Swan. So you've actually got depth. You're not going to a Brian Dixon. You're not going to
Absolutely.
guys you're grabbing off the street and putting them up against A.J. Green. You actually have very good players behind them. We already
I
talked about Robinson and Stupar behind Anthony. Rankins goes down. He's a three technique guy. Look what you got behind you. A former first-round pick who, for whatever reasons, never panned out as a full-time starter, but he's a three technique, and Nick Fairley. And this isn't just like pick 31, pick 32. This is top 5 pick. you
That's
know.
right.
So you've got a good player coming behind him who, if he can play 25, 30, 40 snaps, you know, defensively for you in those 4 games, you should be okay until Rankins can come back, and then you can go back to the rotation you set up to begin with. It's not the end of the world. You're not force feeding, you know, I don't know, a Lawrence Virgil,
Yeah.
someone like that into that spot. You actually got somebody who's halfway decent. Now we can't obviously afford any more injuries, but you're not you're trying to rebuild a defense. You're not in panic mode because you're now one player away from grabbing people off the street or signing, a 35-year-old veteran to come and try and save your season. Uh,
I think the quote of the week goes to Dennis Allen yesterday afternoon during an interview. They asked him, "How do you move on from a Sheldon Rankins?" He said, "Well, exactly that. How do you deal with it? You move on."
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. So injuries are never fun. Uh,
but they're a part of the game.
they are. People were complaining that the Greenbrier has made the Saints soft. The Greenbrier was too much of a country club. They wanted more physical practices. Well, you got more physical practices. Now, I'm not saying these injuries weren't going to happen if you would have played more shorts and shells and touch kind of football. Injuries still happen regardless. But if you want a more physical team, you're going to have players um, who can possibly get injured. So.
And speaking of moving on,
Mhm.
let's prepare for Houston. Moving on down the road,
Yeah.
we need to get to Allen's 53. I'm gonna real quickly. I want to go through and remind everyone of the guys that you chose on defense. Um, for defensive line, you chose 10,
Hmm.
and that was Cam Jordan, Sheldon Rankins, Tyler Davidson, Obum Gwacham, Nick Fairley, John Jenkins, Kasim Edebali, Davis Tull, Bobby Richardson, and David Onyemata.
Yeah.
And
Tull's been. I'm sorry. I said Tull. I was just going to say Tull's been a little bit of a disappointment too for a lot of people. They thought he'd be right in the mix with the pass rush, and he has not been. He's really struggled. So that could very well change given the injuries too. But go
sure,
ahead. I'm sorry.
linebackers, you got 6 guys. Donnell Ellerby, James Laurinaitis, Stephon Anthony, Craig Robertson, Nate Stupar, and Michael Maudie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are all very, very good, very solid choices. Cornerbacks, you chose 5. Delvin Breaux, Keenan Lewis, P.J. Williams, Damian Swan, and Devontae Harris. And also in that mix with the Keenan Lewis situation being such as it is, you also added Ken Crawley
Mm-hmm.
as a possible. And safeties, you had 5 with Jairus Byrd, Kenny Vaccaro, Eric Harris, Von Bell, and Roman Harper.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, do you
Yeah,
want me
I
to
think.
do? Do I need
Well,
to
I
do
think
kickers?
no, no. Well, Forbath was Shankosaurus. Like he kicked more turf than football. The way that ball died. So we'll see how the kickers go. I know they signed Cortland Finnegan. Um, I think that's just a body right now.
I
I'd be
don't see.
shocked if he
I don't
makes
see him
if he
even
makes the
making the
roster.
53.
No, I think he's just a body for practice and for these preseason games.
I,
Um,
to be
I
honest,
just thought we should mention
don't
that.
see him. I don't see him even being on the level of some of these second-year guys that we. Uh, just
I
my
think he's
opinion.
had. I think he's had to push him, and he. Yeah, this is just in case stuff.
Yeah,
We don't
yeah.
know what's going to happen with Lewis yet. Rumors are he's going to go on recallable IR or possibly the pup list because he's had a setback from the hip surgery. His knee sounds like he's been overcompensating. Um, who knows with that? So that's why he's there. But I just don't see him unless he has an unbelievable preseason. I just don't see him making the roster. Um, yeah, so let's look at the offense real quick then. Um, Quarterbacks, we kind of talked about this already. The 3 that we have are the 3 that are going to make it. Uh, and McCown's going to get the nod over Grayson as far as number 2 guy. Grayson is still a long ways from being that number 2 guy. He's got a lot of development. It was good to see him playing with the 1s and the 2s. I think you'll probably see it reversed this week with McCown getting the bulk of the snaps in the second and third quarter and Grayson doing the cleanup. Um, Running backs, and we talked a little bit about this with Ingram, Hightower, and Spiller, who made a cameo appearance against New England. He actually had a cut, and I was impressed with the cut. But
They
again,
brought it back on a penalty too.
yeah, they
It
did. They
it
did.
it was a very good, very athletic play that he made, and
Yeah,
I was duly impressed. But like I say, it didn't count.
right. So and then Kuhn. They even actually tried the goal line play with Kuhn. I think Kuhn's going to make the team. I think they're going to keep him. At the time, I thought they were going to go 4 tight ends. I think Kuhn is pretty much is going to be on the team. The battle is still between Lasco and Murphy, like we talked about earlier. Who's going to make the better play in special teams? I think that's what's going to determine those 2.
I
I
completely agree.
I had Lasco ahead of Murphy. I think Murphy got a little ahead of Lasco today. Let's just see how it plays out in the season. Wide receivers. The BMW club, of course, has the top: Cooks, Thomas, and Snead. Coleman, he's really in a fight. He really is. He has to really show up. I have R.J. Harris making the team, but we talked about Tommy Lee Lewis. If he ends up being a great kick returner, Tommy Lee Lewis could easily be that fifth wide receiver. You
Sure.
know, four are active on game day. So Coleman's not guaranteed anything right now. Um, the other receivers, I saw Bell make a couple plays, Dangerfield make a couple plays. Harris has to really stand out. I was kind of giving him the benefit of the doubt just because he was on the practice squad last year. But I think Tommy Lee Lewis has got the best shot if he can be a good kick returner, to
Sure.
make the team.
A
Um,
wide receiver that's going to play special teams is always going to be a higher asset because you're
yeah,
getting two for the price of one.
right, right. And then the tight ends, Fleener, Hooman, and Hill, that's your three tight ends. I'll tell you this: for fantasy football, a lot of people saying go Fleener, go Fleener, go Fleener. I think that Michael Thomas is going to end up being the number one guy as far as fantasy
Yeah.
football. You know, Cooks is your speed guy. That's your home run threat. But I think Thomas is going to get a lot of looks in that red zone, more so than Fleener. I think Fleener is going to be more of that third down kind of guy. He and Snead going to be going back and forth in that third down kind of play. But I think Thomas, you're going to see get a lot of first downs.
Well,
Um,
from what I understand, Fleener is still struggling to grasp the offense. He's running wrong routes and so on and so forth. I heard a
yeah,
very interesting opinion today that said, "Don't be at all surprised if you look up a year from now and Thomas is the number one and Cooks moves into the number two."
well, the good thing, we've talked about this before too, the good thing about the Saints offense is Cooks, Thomas, and Snead can play all three positions. They're all interchangeable, and that's what makes Sean Payton's offense so effective. You don't have to lock Thomas in as the X or
Yeah,
Cooks as the X. They can play the Y. They can play the slot. They can move all over the place, and you can get those matchups that you want so badly. And if Spiller shows anything, that he can come out of the backfield, kind of come out in those wheel routes or come out in that little arrow route that Thomas and not Thomas, Sproles and Bush used to run so well. That just makes everything so much more effective. Um,
and something that you pointed out a week or so ago. You got to remember Ingram
oh, you
has
froze. Okay.
become the receiver that he used.
Yeah,
Did I?
Ingram is a much better receiver than he was 2 years ago. Last year he really stepped up, and that was good because without Pierre Thomas, the screen pass we thought was a gone play. Uh, Sent to the archives, and Thomas actually ran the screen pass very well. He wasn't fighting the ball anymore. So, that's helpful too because now it's not like, okay, Pierre Thomas is in, not Pierre Thomas, Mark Ingram's in, uh, it's going to be a running play. He can actually know he's going to catch the ball. And that was part of the predictability the Saints offense kind of developed in 2014 was you knew Brees was going to Graham or he's going to throw to Thomas on the screen pass. You knew what was coming because you didn't have that diversity of weapons. You've got that
Sure.
diversity now.
And
The only
and I
key is, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I was saying the only key is the offensive line.
Yeah.
We have to see improvement in the offensive line. We already know who the starters are, so who are going to be the backups? Well, I think Jack Allen's played his way into the number one backup spot. Uh, Landon Turner is in a fight for his life. I've got Turner making the team, but I can easily see Turner not make it. And the reason why I got Turner in there is because he seems to be the best of the guards. Okay,
Yeah.
you can let's say Streif goes down, we can reshuffle the lineup and move, Streif over. I mean, move Pete over to tackle and put a guard in. Plug a guard in as an injury. So that's what I was thinking of with Allen and Turner in there. You've got a backup center guard and a backup guard, and you've already got a guard tackle starting. You know,
Yeah.
but Kellemente's in the mix too. So where does
Sure.
Kellemente fit in? I've got 8 offensive linemen, 5 starters and 3 backups. If Clemente, who can play tackle, he did play tackle in the last game of the season. They've got him back out there playing tackle a little bit with the third team. You know, is it going to be Clemente and Allen? Is it going to be Clemente, Turner, and Allen? We don't know yet. So that's how I see it right now. If the Saints make a trade, Turner may get cut and end up in the practice squad. You don't know. But
Sure.
that's
And I
barring any
and I
changes.
and
Okay, you froze on me again. Okay, we lost you for a second there. I think we're going to catch the tail end of what you're saying. Um, but while he's
one that
oh,
I
there
would
you are.
I can't I was just saying right off the top of my head, I can't think of one player that you chose that I would make an argument to not make the roster.
Right,
Uh,
right.
so as usual, you and I pretty much agree on that.
Okay. Sure. And it's like I said, there's a lot that can happen between now and then. But right now,
Sure.
all I see right now is based on what they've got on the team. These are the guys that are probably going to make it. These are things to watch out for. And we talk about the guys who we should look at this coming week, and that's what we should talk about next. Preview next week. Um, the is it Thursday night again? They play
Saturday.
Houston on Thursday, Saturday night. Okay, good.
Yes.
All right, I missed the first series actually because of Thursday night because for some reason I thought it came on at 7, and it started at 6:30, and I didn't even leave work till 6. Um, so Saturday night football against the Houston Texans. I doubt we'll see Breeze much longer than we did last time. Uh, I doubt we're going to see J.J. Watt very long. Um, it's going to be a lot like that first preseason game. Maybe they'll play a whole quarter this time, depending on how drives turn out. Um, but it's a third preseason game. That's the game that really looks most like a
Yeah.
regular season game.
Yeah.
So the key is then let's see if they've cleaned up penalties. You expect a certain amount of penalties at the end of a preseason game, but in the beginning of it, that first half,
Yes.
How does the defense respond in the first half? How do they clean up the turnovers? That's key. Don't put the ball on the ground. Don't throw interceptions. Play a clean, crisp offensive and defensive series. Play that for a quarter and a half, and I'll be happy. I mean, that would be a good
Absolutely.
preseason game, and come out with no
All I,
injuries.
all I want to see is, first and foremost, like you just said, I want to see the guys stay healthy. I
Yeah.
want to see a focused and determined effort from the
Mm-hmm.
players. And, despite what some people say, I'm not really that concerned with the points at this stage of the game. I want to see execution. I want to see the guys accomplish what they're supposed to accomplish. And if they do that, the points will take care of them.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, the final score is not important. You want to win. It's nice to win, but it's all about execution at this point. It's all about how does the first team look, even with substitutions coming in and out. How does it look in that first half? Um, you know,
Sure.
and I don't want to see guys that we're going to be counting on next year or this coming season, I should say, putting the ball on the ground or turning the ball over. I don't want to see that. I want to see our defense get
At all.
turnovers. I want to see our defense to
Absolutely.
force turnovers.
That's one thing from the New England game that there were several plays. One that I can think of right off the top of my head. Eric Harris had the opportunity for a pick and didn't quite finish.
Right, right. He didn't. 3 of them. There were 3 of them they dropped. Eric Harris, I think, dropped 2. Von Bell dropped 1. Uh, you cannot have uh, guys. They get the interceptions in practice. They've got to get the interceptions in the game. We were -4 on turnovers. You can't have that. You've got to be on the plus side. Even in a preseason game, I want to be on the plus side. So that's what to look for this week. So we'll talk about the Houston game next week, and any other new moves that they make between now and then? The first cut down, I think, is Tuesday. Is it after the third game or the fourth game? I mean, the second game.
I'll have to look into that.
I think it might be after the second game, the first cut down. So that's where you might actually see some movement, where you might see us pick up a guy here or there. Um,
We
anyway,
want.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, thank you to everybody for joining us.
Absolutely.
We always love to hear from you guys. You can reach us on uh, Facebook on the Under the Dome podcast Facebook page, on Twitter at Under the Dome PO1. I think. Did I get that right?
I think that's right.
I tweet from it, not to it.
Yeah,
Uh, and once again, we want to wish Joey a speedy recovery.
absolutely.
Get better, brother.
Yes, absolutely. All right, guys. I appreciate everything that you guys send us questions, send us comments about what you see on these podcasts, questions you want answered. Uh, you know, it's not all just about the preseason games, about what you want to see for the regular season. Uh, and we'll try and answer them as best we can. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. Hope to see y'all next week. Good night, everyone.